Waves and particles. Newton first described light as a group of corpuscles, corpuscles was the name he gave them, and was able to explain reflection, refraction, and dispersion of light. Later on, Thomas Young and many others found a wave-like description worked better, and it was the only way to explain how light diffracts. James Clerk Maxwell, in the early 1800s, described light as perpendicular magnetic and electric fields moving as a wave. So we have particle, wave, wave. Then Einstein brought back the particle model to describe the photoelectric effect, and Arthur Compton used the particle model to explain the frequency shift of scattered photons off of electrons. So we have a bit of a dichotomy here where the same phenomena, light, is described as both a particle and a wave. Now, since light had been described both as a wave and as a particle, Louis de Broglie in 1924 proposed that particles such as electrons, neutrons, protons could be described as waves. So they also would have a dual nature, and he said the wavelength would be Planck's constant over their momentum. Now that's the same equation we just showed a little earlier for the Compton shift. That's the momentum of a photon, and right there. And we could also say this would be the momentum of a particle, like an electron, which would give rise to a wavelength. So now we're talking about particles like electrons, protons, etc. having a wavelength. So all particles, and by extension objects like baseballs and bowling balls, have a de Broglie wavelength associated with their motion. But since h here is very, very small, the wavelength associated with large objects is vanishingly small. However, for small particles like electrons, their de Broglie wavelengths are comparable to their physical size. So one might expect that electrons could experience wave-like effects like diffraction and interference. De Broglie proposed that an interference experiment be set up with crystals and electrons to validate his theory. But remarkably, no one tried that until decades later.